idea what's going on here.
All right, so
you have Ben's deck list in front of you.
Yeah, it appears to be just a bug control deck. He has Master Biomancer, Gristlebrand, Vampire Nighthawk, Snapcaster Mage, Thragtusk, a Jace, Tameo, a Garruk, Soul Ransom, Farseek, Think Twice, Tragic Slips. I mean, yeah, it's just all good stuff.
Okay.
Good stuff, bug.
And he is against David Thomas here. He's made the trek from Houston, Texas. David, you guys are probably familiar with. He has 6 Open Series top 8s. He's got an invitational top 8 as well. You do see him casting a Jace Architect of Thought, a 1-of in his main deck of his Esper control deck. And within this deck, you're going to find 1 Snapcaster Mage, 2 Augur of Bolas, and a whole lot of spells. Terminus, Supreme Verdict, Azorius Charm, Victim of Night, that 1 Detention Sphere, Timely, for that Gristlebrand, 4 Lingering Souls, 2 Dissipates, 4 Sphinx Revelations, 2 Think Twice, and a newbie, and probably a goodie, Obsidat, Ghost Council.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of hype surrounding this card, obviously.
Yeah.
Super, super powerful. The mana is prohibitive. The question is, is there a deck where you can put this yet? But there's no doubt about the power level of the card.
Yeah.
Through the roof.
And he's got a couple Planeswalkers, that Jace Architect of Thought that you guys did see him cast, Jace Memory Adept, Liliana of the Veil, and Sorin, Lord of Innistrad. And what you guys did see as well while we were going over these decks is David Thomas up a game, as Ben did concede. Pat, I know you have Ben's deck list in front of you. He's against an Esper control deck that has a lot of permission, some Planeswalkers, and we're not sure if he saw Obsidat or not, but what can help him?
He has 3 copies of Duress, 2 copies of Underworld Connections, and Elixir of Mortality. I don't know if we're on an actual Catacomb plan.
Yeah, we've got 3 and 5.
Drown Yard Parent.
3 Drown Yards here.
2 copies of Liliana, which are probably not their best here. The Duresses, he has a Singleton Vraska the Unseen.
Okay.
Seems good to me here. And just the extra card drawing and a little bit of protection against getting milled out in Elixir.
Okay. Taking a look at David's sideboard, again, he is up a game here. He's got that 4th and 5 Drown Yard in the sideboard. 2 copies of Deadweight, a Liliana of the Veil in his sideboard to go along with the one that's in his main deck. 2 copies of Dispel, 2 copies of Negate, 2 copies of Dissipate, 2 more additional copies of Supreme Verdict in his sideboard to go along with 2 copies of Rest in Peace and additional Jace Memory Adept. We obviously walked into that game. It looked like it did go a little while there. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what he wants to move in and move out. We have the benefit of having the information here. It doesn't look like David's Wrath effects are very good.
No, not really.
As Ben doesn't have a ton of creatures, and some of his creatures are, Thragtusk. So maybe you see him side out those 2 Supreme Verdicts and those 2 Terminus, maybe sideboard into a little bit more spot removal, maybe rely on these Planeswalkers and these counter spells a little bit more, because he does, again, have 2 Dissipates main deck and 2 Dissipates in his sideboard.
Yeah, it's funny, normally these control matchups are just, we all kind of have the same stuff, and we can play the game at the same pace, but when the other deck has Gristlebrand in it, you're on a ton of pressure to do something, because it doesn't even matter if you answer it with a sweeper or even a removal spell on the spot. The edge is so big that it puts David on a lot of pressure to do something proactive to avoid just losing to Gristlebrand.
And it makes you wonder, right? That game that we walked into, we saw a Detention Sphere on a Gristlebrand. So, did Ben draw 7 cards or potentially 14 cards and just miss? Or, what happened there? That's the big question, as you do see David is up a game. Maybe he milled him out after he did draw 7 or 14. Not quite sure, but you did see Ben concede relatively quickly after we did join the game, and you did see, again, that Gristlebrand being taken care of. So,
well, Ben's deck seems not terribly well set up for something like Esper Game 1 because he has so much spot removal in this deck.
Sure.
His deck seems much more dedicated to beating just attacking decks. It's very possible that's where you want to be in this metagame, but certainly I believe it's something of a disadvantage here against David. Game 1, he's got Tragic Slips, Sever the Bloodlines, Abrupt Decays. He's got Rancor, which I'm sure he's trying to pair with things like Thragtusk and Vampire Nighthawk. That stuff, again, can be good against attacking decks, but less so here.
And one thing that's kind of interesting, you do see David basically taking the challenge this weekend, playing a control deck, something that we discussed a little bit earlier in the broadcast. That is something that's difficult to do, and his numbers in his deck reflect that. You see 2 Terminus, you see 2 Supreme Verdict, you see 1 Detention Sphere, a couple Dissipates here, 1 of each of his Planeswalkers, because again, when you're in an open format with all these new cards coming in, you're not really sure what the best answers are to the questions that people are presenting, let alone you're not really quite sure what the questions people are going to be presenting are in the first place.
Yeah, the only thing in his deck that approaches, hey, I have an opinion on what's going to be going on here, is Victim of Night. Everything else is just doesn't really matter what the threats are; they are all answers.
Yeah. So we do see both players looking at their opening 7. Ben's going to take a mulligan. David organizing his hand. He looks happy. So Ben is going to be starting with at least 6 cards this game. I think, you know, for week 1, you know, something that we do keep saying, for week 1 here, you know, I think this is what a control deck probably has to look like, right?
Yeah.
Just as far as, you know, a lot of diversity between the threats. You know, I think, again, you said he's pretty confident in Victim of Night. He also seems very confident in Obsidian Ghost Council as being like his way to probably go about ending games.
Yeah.
Which is an obscure way for a control deck to actually end games.
Right.
You know, that kind of card, you know, that card feels mid-range to me. Maybe it's an aggressive card that beats up on control strategies, but you don't really expect that card to be a win condition for a control deck.
No, I mean, the things you sort of, the way you've been hearing people talking about it, it sounds like a throwback to the old Ravnica, you know, Angel Despair Ghost Council decks, as you see Ben going to 5 here. Those are the kind of decks people are anticipating it going into, because it just seems like that kind of attrition-y, grindy, black-white, mid-range card that we associate with that style of deck.
Yeah.
But David's using it here as both a reasonable threat against beatdown decks, because it gives you some amount of life. Nothing really else that slot does that for these colors. And it's awesome against other control decks because it's so hard to kill.
You do see Ben is going to keep his 5 cards. Doesn't look incredibly pleased about it, but the game is underway here. David's going to start with a Watery Grave. And we have a duress here from Ben. David face up. We got a Jace the Mind Sculptor. Excuse me, not Jace the Mind Sculptor. Jace Memory Adept. A Sphinx's Revelation. Victim of Night. You do see the Ghost Council there and 3 lands. An Isolated Chapel, Drowned Catacomb, and additional Water Grave. Jace is going to bite the dust here. We'll see if Ben has a second land or not.
Pretty awesome hand for David.
Yeah, good hand. And, you know, we do see Obsidian Ghost Council in his hand, so maybe we'll see that in action here. And it is a game, you know, when your opponent does stumble around, as it looks like Ben may be doing, does have a Hinterland Harbor. It can close the game out very quickly.
Yep.
Something that Esper control decks in the past really couldn't do.
Yeah, I mean, they had to lean pretty much on going ultimate with a Planeswalker or Drown Yard.
Yeah.
This is much faster than either of those routes, of course.
Think Twice is what David drew for his previous turn. He does cast that on Ben's end step. You see Drowned Catacombs come in. He is just happy to pass the turn back. Probably going to flash it back at the end of Ben's turn. And Ben does draw an Overgrown Tomb, puts it into play untapped right away, so it's going to push him down to 18.
Looks like Ben brought in his Liliana. Brought in his Lilianas in the sideboard.
Yep. And you do see Vampire Nighthawk here. It's going to resolve. David going to draw a card with the second half of Think Twice. Some nice velocity here from his deck. Godless Shrine coming to play untapped. Going to bring him down to 18. I feel like we're going to be saying that a lot this weekend.
Yep.
And you see a Jace Architect of Thought.
He's going to +1 the Jace.
Yep, going to +1 the Jace. Make it so that Nighthawk is going to only be serving in for 1, so long as he does remember the trigger. It's kind of nice here for Ben, whose window is open here to resolve the Liliana of the Veil.
Unfortunately, yeah, he's on 5 cards, so it's really hard for him to win that +1 fight unless he's able to get himself empty-handed, which is challenging.
Ben thinking his turn through here. Is he going to pull the trigger? What do I want to do? Looks like he's thinking about okay, so we see a Rancor. Okay. So Rancor coming across. David does remember the trigger. So Jace is going to end up taking 3 damage. It's going to go down to 2 counters. And David is going to use the mini Factor Fiction, revealing a Dispel and 2 Isolated Chapels. Depending on how many lands David does have in his hand. Ben having David make the decision on, do you want the counterspell or do you want the lands?
Yeah, I think David has a bunch of lands in hand and is close to discarding, so he's happy to just...
Defy Drown Yard followed up with a Obsidian Ghost Council, the newbie. A lot of people compare this card. You know, obviously when you think of a Ghost Council, you think of the old Ghost Council, and this is not that.
No,
this is a very different card.
Yes.
And as you did see, it did get slid out there by David. It is hiding right now. Good flavor on that card.
Oh, it's sweet.
Yeah,
it's totally
it's really sweet.
Sweet design.
Think Twice here from Ben. Trying to find the land drop here. But the Ghost Council is back. A little bit of another life swing here. And now it will have haste. It can come across. And this is the kind of card to me, Patrick, is you are going to see Ghost Council probably come across here for 5, and David do some more things on his turn. You know, this is a scary card.
Yes.
Because it is so powerful, and you can easily see this card kind of like old Ghost Council did previously. You know, the old Ghost Council, as different as these cards are, excuse me, that was a card that could dominate a game.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of in the same fashion. This can dominate a game by itself.
Like, yeah, I mean, we're learning a lot about seeing this card in play right now. Ben can't even really stick a Planeswalker, because the Planeswalker just dies immediately, you know what I mean? Like, the answers that he can have for this card are so narrow that it's really challenging for him to win from here, even if David does very little for the remainder of the game.
Yeah. Just spinning it in and out, up and down and all around. And, you know, can you stop this you know, 5-power attacker plus these life swings that are happening every turn? That's very difficult to do. As we do see Ben resolve a Farseek, David is going to hit him with the Defy Drown Yard, hitting a Jace, a Woodland Cemetery, and a Breeding Pool. And you are going to see Ghost Council come back now. Drain 2, gain 2. David going to take a draw step. And, you know, this is basically Ghost Council, you know, doing its thing here, Patrick, has actually caused Ben to hold back with the Nighthawk that has a Rancor on it, which would normally be, you know, pretty good.
Yeah, not a bad threat.
Yeah. And so the Nighthawk does jump in front here. It's going to gain Ben some life. The Rancor is going to come back to his hand, and David is completely fine with that trade. Maybe that means that he has another Ghost Council living here. Well, you're actually just going to see a Sorin, Lord of Innistrad. One of those cards, you know, we discussed cards that were kind of on the back burner previously that might start to be good again. You know, with Godless Shrine being in the format now, and, you know, we do have Intangible Virtue, we do have Lingering Souls, and those cards are actually easier to cast. Maybe this starts to come back?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Sorin before in Nick Spagnuolo's Planeswalker control build, which this deck is clearly inspired by in some respects. But yeah, I think certainly Godless Shrine and just more, you know, more consistent mana, and a card like Ghost Council just to add raw power to the deck might be enough to make Sorin a real thing.
As you are going to see another Vampire Nighthawk here from Ben. Puts a Rancor on it again, so same show that we did see previously. David's going to start kicking up that Sorin. Vampires are coming into play now, and David again does have a pretty full hand here. You do see a Dissipate in his hand. He also does have a Terminus. You know, just needs to use his life total as a resource here, maybe protect his Sorin the best that he can. But basically, I'd say in the driver's seat right now.
Oh, he's very, very far ahead on mana and cards and board presence. He has Revelations in his hand and in his deck, which Ben does not. And so just very, overall, very challenging scenario for Ben to try to slog his way through.
So you do see Ben going to cast a Liliana of the Veil here in the second main phase.
And this is a pretty anemic Liliana with, you know, the Edicts getting a token and Ben having all those cards in. It looks like Dave's just going to dissipate this.
Yeah, David cares enough about it that he's going to get rid of it.
So we're going to see another Drown Yard activation. Getting those tokens cleared up there. David across for 2. And just passes back.
Snapcaster on the end step.
Just to get his beat on here.
Alright, Sorin. Alright, jump in front of that. Happy there.
Yep, Sorin down.
Sorin gonna bite the dust, I believe. I think that thing's finished off, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I believe so.
I see him just over there. Sorin, he has no dice. Yeah, there we go. They would say, you can't stop the Lord of Innistrad. You can only hope to contain him.
Yeah, he's like a vampire or something, so you can't kill him.
Yeah. We are going to see a Thragtusk here in the second main phase for Ben. Ben left with just one card in his hand. Again, David has all the cards. I think we're going to find some more. Yeah.
So there's a Revelation leaving up 1 mana, so he can dispel in the event that Ben has to spell in his deck.
Yep. Good tight play there by David. He does get his 5 cards, gets his 5 life, and if he wasn't ahead on cards before, he sure as heck is now.
Yeah, it's really hard for decks without these control decks that are without Revelation. Is playing against the Revelations deck is just a nightmare.
It's almost like you're handicapping yourself in a control mirror, right? You know, if you're playing a control deck without Sphinx of Revelation in it, I think you have to have a very, very good reason to do so. And it really begs the question on does Ben have a good reason to not be playing the card?
Well, I think the biggest reason is just he wants to. I think his deck is just very metagamed against beatdown decks. I mean, look at like every card he's played basically. With a Kill Spell, a Nighthawk, a Thragtusk.
Because you are going to see Supreme Verdict take care of the creatures. Thragtusk is going to make the Beast token. Rancor does come back to Ben's hand. And we'll get a Beast token into play for you guys in just a moment. Duress. David is going to Victim of Night, take care of the Beast token. Duress is going to resolve. You're going to see a hand of a couple Victim of Nights, a Terminus, at least one Snapcaster Mage, and a Dispel to go along with another the Thalia Drown Yard. So just a removal heavy hand right now.
Yep.
Duress, not really having a great target right now. You know, Dispel is the more unique of them, but with Snapcaster Mage, doesn't really matter what you take here.
Yep. David's hand a little sought to Planeswalkers. We'll see if Ben has a big follow-up.
Is there a Liliana looming? There is.
Okay.
All right. A little bit of fight here. Discard a Victim of Night. Ben discards his last card, which is a Rancor. Passes the turn back. Going to try to ride Liliana to victory here.
Gonna be really rough when next turn it could be Snapcaster for Revelation. Oh, we're just gonna fire it off.
Yeah, you're just gonna see David Snapcaster now. You know,
I guess we're just on a Drown Yard plan at this point.
Yeah, you know, probably just try to get better control of that. Yep, knock the Liliana Veil down to 2. Put David in the position. Put Ben in the position of do you want to edict this to get rid of it, or do you want to plus it? You know, keep yourself card locked. And he is just gonna plus it. David's going to discard an Isolated Chapel. You're going to see Think Twice here from Ben. He's just going to pass the turn back. And yeah, we're going to see some Drown Yarding here. David Thomas doing his best Reed Duke impersonation.
Yep, just drowning.
An apprentice.
So we're going to attack this Liliana, I assume. Knock it down to 1 counter.
No threat of the Snapcaster Mage dying now. Hollow Fountain going to come to play untapped for David Thomas. Knock him down to a healthy 25 with all the life gain in his deck. Between Sphinx of Revelation and the life gain that we saw from Ozak Ghost Council, not pretty good.
There's a Soul Ransom, I believe.
Soul Ransom, the new control magic coming up on the screen for you guys. A unique one.
Yep.
One that you don't. It's kind of hard to figure out where that card is going to find a home.
Right, it seems very good against mid-range threats, potentially. A little slow for beatdown decks, because your opponent can just blow it up, and then not great against the other control decks, because control magic's traditionally not very good against those kind of decks, but certainly against some style of, not against Master of the Fells specifically, but those kind of, that style of deck.
Now we are going to see the Soul Ransom. David did just, discard his 2 cards. Gave Ben 2 cards with the Liliana activation on the stack, so Ben actually did have to discard 1 of them. Liliana bites the dust, and so now we see Snapcaster Mage controlling the Planeswalkers, controlling the battlefield a little bit. The best that a 2/1 can do it, is we're going to see Garrett Primal Hunter negate the last card for David.
Yep. And even if he had not drawn negate, I think the Drown Yards probably would have outraced.
Yeah, probably do outrace the Garrick there.
Yeah. With David at 27.
The Garrick, it is going to be able to make a 3/3 each turn, but drawing cards with the Drown Yards in play with the Garrick, it's basically a Drown Yard activation there.
Yep.
So it's a bit risky. You're going to see Woodland Cemetery come into play, and Ben with a bit of a frown on his face. Drown Yard's never a fun way to go.
No. The blue burnouts.
Yeah. The old blue fireball. It's not as painful as Millstone, but it's close. we're going to see main deck activations here. The Elixir of Immortality on the bottom of Ben's deck, and Ben is going to scoop him up. So David Thomas, with his Esper control deck, taking the control deck challenge, wins 2-0.
His deck, like we said, a lot more smooth, streamlined.